Yeah, when you said that, I was thinking, well, it was a couple years ago now, but my cat passed away, and it was a really difficult time for me to like readjust to life without her, since it was a very long time. So I was thinking, it would have been nice if my animal could have lived forever and been with me forever. And so when I saw these electric dogs, I thought, wow, maybe instead I should have like these electric dogs could be with me essentially forever, or these electric animals. So what do you think about that concept?
Yeah, I do think when I was just presenting a paper at a conference and we are talking about the downside of companion animals in facilities and in care homes, usually it's trip hazards where, older folks are going to fall. So there are a lot of things that would benefit if you can create an attachment to a virtual pet or a virtual companion animal of some sort, then that would be great. I don't think that we're there yet for what I would say again are some of the corporeal, the body physical touch things, and I'll just say that it's connected to the fact that they're mammals. So I don't know that it's the same for reptiles. I love a lizard, so don't get me wrong, because I really want one, but it's not probably a practical pet for me. Not a good companion for me. But I want a bearded dragon bad. But if you look at mammalian physiology, dogs have mirror neurons just like humans do, and a lot of the attachment and oxytocin and love, that the love hormone that we release, is released through touch and through gazing. And so I don't think it would be quite the same for you. I think that, yeah, Wilson in The Castaway, he cried, he was upset. I mean, he was under duress, he was traumatized. So I do think it would become a huge thing. And it's just like having your wubby, your blanket when you're little. You can become very attached. But there's a health benefit and an emotional, social, and psychological benefit to having the hands-on smells, the holding, the caring for in a way that embodies survival, that is part of that human animal connection. So I think it would be a great approximation, and it would be a great bridge, or a great substitute if there is a limitation somehow temporarily or permanently in your ability to bring an animal into your life. You can't do that. Then I would say it would be a great substitute. But I don't think there probably is any substitute for the real thing. And I will say too, just in the grieving, part of your grief, I think, is connected to what we're only now starting to investigate about where our attachment, love, and connection to animals lies in the brain, or is in the brain. And that is, when you lose a companion animal, you're not losing a linguistic partner. You may talk to them. You're losing a a bodily experience. So one of the things that will happen often to people when they lose a beloved companion is that they will hear them and see them in the house out of the side of their gaze, because their presence is a kind of bodily presence. It's a spatial relationship too. And so your grief was compounded because your relationship with a companion animal is so much more physical than it is with another human who's a friend, for example. Yeah.
And I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine last week about this. We were talking about the fact we both had cats that had passed, but both of us said, no, I can feel him jump on the bed.
Yes,
I
yes,
feel like it's still happening. She's like, yes, I can feel him, curl up on the pillow next to me still. Even though I know that he's not there, but I can
right,
physically feel that.
right, right,
Mhm,
exactly.
mhm.
And yeah, we could hear clip, clip. you'd hear something like a click. Nope,
Mm,
no, it's not Paul.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
heartbreaking, but it's part of that process.
Mm-hmm,
And I think if you sit with it and you think they meant so much to me,
mm-hmm,
they were part of me. That's what it
mm-hmm,
means. It's like they're part of you. You're,
mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I personally still just say hello to him. I just, I feel that energy jumping on the bed. I'm like, okay, hey, his name was Seven. Like, okay, Seven. And just kind of roll over and go back to sleep and just realize that that is just something that takes a long time to kind of fade away.
yeah.
Well, making a shift, you are deeply involved in the feral cat rescue.
Oh boy, am I.
Yes. What got you involved in this work and how has it impacted your life?
Well, I'm a full-fledged cat lady, I guess, and I hope I dispel some mythic stereotypes about that. But um, I think sometimes people are in shock when they find out, what I do pretty much in for my hobby, I, like anybody, love animals, all the animal lovers out there know. So I had a garden home. My first home was like a really low maintenance garden home. And I was young, and there were cats in the backyard, and I wanted to feed them. I always had wanted a cat. My mother and father were dog people, and my dad kept trying to make us cat people, and it never worked because my mother wouldn't let them be in the house, and if they're outside, they're not your cat. They're feral cats or they're neighborhood cats, and so I never really got the cat. So some people are like, oh, that's a deep psychological thing. But I had these cats in my backyard. One was named Edison, and Edison was the first cat that I TNR'd. And I didn't know anything about TNR. I was 29 years old, 30 years old. And I didn't really know about it, but I thought, gosh, she keeps having babies and this is horrible. And I thought, well, maybe if I get her and I take her to the vet, they'll fix her. And I take her to the vet and fix her. They didn't ear tip her because it was just like, oh, here's you charge me full price, And I started then doing that with all her kittens. And so we had a makeshift feral colony in my backyard. And the neighbors also were feeding, which is how they ended up there because I had just moved in when this started going on. And then their health issues started because they're outdoor cats. There were parasites, worms. So then I find myself looking to see like, well, I can give my indoor cat wormer. Can I give my outdoor cats? Can I give them wormer? So it became this sort of trial and error. I had no idea that already in places like Rome, there were hundreds of cats in people's care in a program called Trap-Neuter-Return. Um, and I was a criminologist, but somehow I came across an article in the news about this Trap-Neuter-Return stuff. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. Oh, goodness, that's what I'm doing. And I started reaching out to people who were doing it. And I started thinking this was a part of my animal turn in my career. I started wanting like, who are these people doing this in these huge colonies and how do they do it? So that was the introduction to it. Then we moved and I had to go around and get all the neighbors' commitments that they would take care of the animal. It's like, it becomes like, it's a village, it really is a village. And when one person leaves, it's a huge thing. And so one of my neighbors decided she would be the caretaker. I moved to a new place and then I moved to Fort Worth. And then I had students at school at TCU who were actually very interested in feral cats. And they said they had a cat in their backyard. So long story short, a colleague of mine in the library had run a TNR program at North Texas. And she said, let's do one on campus. Do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, oh, heck yeah. And so to this day, 27 years later, this woman and I are the leads for the campus cat group. And we spay, neuter, and return and manage all the feral cats that are in this geographic vicinity of our campus. And that sometimes is up to 20 cats, sometimes it's down as low as 16. It has peaked at like 30 in years when we've had people dump a cat that's pregnant and we'll have to deal with that. But we manage them. They're healthy. We're trying to wrangle a sick cat right now that's an interloper, has come in and decided it wants to bully some other cats and be a part of our group. And we're like, hey, we only have one rule around here. If you're part of this group, you're fixed. And so we're wrangling that little, and we call that cat Grumpy, because he just can't get along with anybody else. And so that's how I got into it. And now every night of my life, except on vacation when I have to create a big giant schedule, I feed about 15 to 20 cats every night of my life and trap them and neuter them. I'm known as I'd say I have the reputation of the most daring cat trapper, because if I can't trap them, I'll grab them with my arms. I will like grab them. So I've been bit by cats a few times, I would say, and been to the urgent care to get the antibiotics. But it's a labor of love. And it's also, as increasingly municipalities abandon communities with the services that you used to be able to enjoy, like animal care and control, increasingly they're overwhelmed. There's more and more irresponsibility in pet and companion ownership. Um, and so I feel like I'm doing a civic duty, as my, donation to my community and to my university, in taking care of those animals. Can you hear a cat? No, can you hear it? Oh, okay, because sometimes the Apple computers will narrow this out. I don't know what he's up to out there, but that is not a good meow. They're not feral. I have the three in my house are not feral, but the three on the porch are.
My own boy cat has his ear like snipped so that they know that he's neutered. But I didn't know that was something that they did with previously feral cats put into like adoption or humane societies. And so I've only had him for like a year, but I plan tattoos around the pets that I have because they are so meaningful. And I know that I'm going to get his silhouette of his head with the ear notch, like very specific to him. So when he passes in remembrance of him, I've already got it all planned out. um, but learning that you do it on campus makes a little more sense for your paper, about the contested meaning and places of feral cats.
Yeah.
So why would you say that it's important for humans, to understand what a campus workplace or just any maybe workplace in general can coexist with animals near them?
Yeah, there are a lot of levels to that. That's a great question. Y'all are like on it, man. This is great. I'm enjoying this. Yeah, so there are a lot of levels. At the first level, I would say that, at some point, and I don't think there's some research out there, philosophical research. There's an author called Nell Noddings. Her name is Nell Noddings, and she's a care ethicist. And she came up with this dichotomy of well, not dichotomy, but a categorization of caring for or caring about animals, or caring about or caring for humans. And so there are people who care about humans, and there are people who care for humans. And this tends to be gendered. It tends to be class focused. It tends to have a lot to do with the species. And so I don't know if just investigating the philosophical notions of what it means to be a human has created my sort of ability to talk about why I do what I do. But I am the kind of person, my moral compass, I'm the kind of person who sides with caring for people and animals. I uh, move into the world and through the world through social interaction and relationships. And that doesn't stop with humans. And so I think that one of the advantages of that, and I actually will just bring this, one of my students, I get down and I can be cynical. Trust me, Angela Thompson knows this. But last semester, in the height of a lot of chaos and pain for people, my student said, Dr. Thompson, you are one of the happiest people I have ever known. And I would say the key to that is, even though there's a lot of pain involved in caring directly for other creatures and humans, I wouldn't have it any other way, because without that, the sad part of it, I wouldn't have the heights of the joy of it. And also, there's just a sort of, to me, that's my job as a human being. I'm not a solo practitioner. I'm a social being. That means it is my job. I feel like my brain, my job to connect, to create community, to create that. So at one level, it's a moral imperative for me. And some folks are better at policy and staying above the fray, and they're needed too. I'm not, that's a great way to be in the world. I don't think you can be a politician if you don't have this caring about people. But if you're enmeshed in caring for people, you often don't have time to do the policy. Sometimes you don't have time to do the other stuff. And it is unfortunately a choice. You can do a little both, but you've got to have your own boundaries, and you got to figure out who you are morally, socially, all of that. The other level of that is, I think that people who care for others have greater empathy. I think it hones and develops what is already a human trait, but you can be better at it. It's developed and it's role taking. And I think that my life is better with humans because I care about animals. And sometimes people say, do you care more about cats than people? Of course not. They're equal. And so they're beings. And so there's that part. Like, I believe that caring for animals, caring for humans sort of engenders passionate connection to others. And then at sort of a bigger level of caring for, there is the idea that we are on a shrinking planet, and we're not the only ones who deserve to be here. And if we're going to keep growing in numbers and developing and putting concrete everywhere and windmilling and coal mining and whatever it is, if we're going to continue to do that, animals are going to be closer to us. And if we are going to have a planet with any diversity at all to sustain our own lives, we better figure out how to coexist with other species. Because if we don't, we won't exist. And so to me, it bubbles up to this. This is not just me connecting. This is me helping to do my part for living a more sustainable, more broader moral commitment to existence and survival on planet Earth. So, and I think we have found a new planet, but I think it's too far for now. Does that help? I mean, is that like, did I answer the question? I hope so.
Yes,
That's why I do it.
Wonderful.
And if I find a kitten, I'm like, all right, little sucker, you're in my moral world now. You're getting caught.
Yes. I know. My brother's a big ecolot. He wants to be a park ranger and everything like that. And he goes on rants about feral cats and their detriment to the nature around them and things like that. But I now have an argument against him of
we're on the same
no.
side. We're on the same side, because my ultimate goal, this is so ironic, right? My ultimate goal is fewer cats. I mean, that's my goal, like one cat in the house, one cat in the yard. And the only way to do that, and let me just say, the cat and the human and the roach, those are rats, raccoons. These are super species. These are super successful species. And we've seen historically, and now with research, you cannot eradicate wildcats. They're everywhere, and they're not really fully domesticated. So for one thing, cats are only semi-domesticated. They don't need us. They would have very short, sometimes painful lives, but they don't need us. And if we don't intervene, and some people think that's a moral problem to, that cat didn't tell you you could fix it. You have to be able to deal with that as well. But if you're fixing cats, you're helping your brother have a forest, because we don't need feral cats killing stuff in the forest, because we need the voles and we need the, the little marsupials, and we need them to eat those little rats, and we need the birds of prey to eat them. But I will say this, in the bird situation, there's a lot of conflict over cats and birds, and cats do kill songbirds. I would not deny that. That is an empirical reality. But I'll tell you what eats cats: birds of prey. And I've lost cats to birds of prey, and there are people I know who've lost their sweet little dogs to birds of prey. So it's a cat bird world out there. And so my answer to your brother is like, we're on the same page. Come help me educate people about fixing their cats. And the Audubon Society had a wonderful program a few years back, and it was like Cats Inside program. And it was trying to educate people like, yeah, cats are great, but when you get one, bring it inside. Keep it inside if you can. And people are like, oh, it's inhumane to keep them inside. Well, it's inhumane to kill 2,000 songbirds in a lifetime. And so there's a lot. So I can see both sides, but if a mammal falls in my domain, it's under my care. That's just how I feel.
Well, if you could teach one sociology concept or theory for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
Well, this may not, I think it's connected to animals. I love Durkheim's concept of social effervescence. Love it. When I first discovered that concept, I'm like, that is our life. That is what it means to be human, that's how we create meaning and joy and symbols and even religion. And so social effervescence is this idea that when people get together, their social experience creates the sum is bigger, the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. So we create these moments of almost transcendence and experience of the social. And we can't do it by ourselves. We can only do it with other people. And so for me, that's the secret sauce of being a human. And so that's the concept I would teach. And could teach it with animals. I could teach it with religion, marriage. One of the beautiful things about a marriage ceremony is like, why am I crying? Why am I crying? Well, because we're there together and people are promising what is almost the impossible, but somehow we all believe it because we have this amazing ritual around this combining of souls and lives. It's just like social effervescence. That's my concept, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I know that we just jumped back, but I have a question about the trap, release, and neuter. Um, so I'm half Chilean, and I went to Chile a couple years ago, and there's a lot of dogs wandering around in Chile, like a lot of them. And I know in specific societies as well, like I think it's Turkey, there's a lot of cats as well. What do you think about these societies, and do you recommend that they trap, release, and neuter them? Or do you think that, let me know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, Turkey has a very, very active trap-neuter-return for cats. Feral dogs are a much bigger health issue for countries, for cities, because dogs when they revert to feral, they are not cats. They are not a product of semi-domestication. They're a product of domestication, and they often cannot sustain themselves. And so they are in a state of constant hunger and one-upship. They're constantly trying to find food and security because these are mammals. They're social animals, so they're in packs. And they're not wolves, by the way, so they don't have the wolf characteristics. They don't have the wolf socialization that wolves give one another, and where the male wolf will go hunt and the female wolf stays behind, and then if comes back and they share. This is not the way of wild dog packs. So in many places where there are feralized dog packs, people feed them. They feed them. They try to, they live near dumps. They live near places where there can be food. But feral cats in most nations, and I was just in Sicily a couple years ago, and then again last summer. And Sicily is a very poor industrialized country, island in Italy, which is an industrialized country, but they have a cat problem because it's an island. And so they need more TNR there. So I think any nation needs to be at the highest levels, they need to support TNR because cats cannot be controlled if you're not going to intervene. I mean, their reproduction, and they can live without human beings. But here's another thing they do. And this happened in Borneo, and this may be somewhat apocryphal. I don't know, but I read a story about it. But there was there were a lot of wild cats, and so they got on this tangent of killing them all. And so they started killing all the animals. It's, all the cats, and they mostly killed them all. And they also dropped, they killed a lot of the cats. And so then the rats came. So the rats started overpowering, really become an overpowering force. And that created disease and really horrible problems. And so then they did what is known as, and we can sort of look this up, is the cat drop. So they brought cats back to Borneo. But it wasn't before they had tried DDT and other things to kill the rats. So these cats in Borneo have a significant genetic problem because they're eating rats poisoned by DDT. So they have what we call bamboo tail. And so their tails are bizarre. They're like all different shapes and sizes and bizarre, And so I think that in developing nations and in poor areas of US cities and any industrialized nations, any what we call Western nations, if you don't have TNR, you have too many cats. I mean, that's just the facts. And so we need to adopt TNR, Trap-Neuter-Return. And in there somewhere, there's vaccinate, because there's also the deep need to vaccinate the cats against feline leukemia, feline AIDS, all of it, and rabies especially. And so I think that in Peru, I think I think Ecuador, Peru, I think Brazil, I think there are many countries there are huge factions that are adopting TNR. Probably not enough, but in most of the major cities, there are TNR groups. It's an international movement. And I went to Italy on purpose, to Rome, to visit one of the biggest cat sanctuaries for TNR cats in the world. They used to live in the Colosseum, but they cleared them from the Colosseum. There wasn't a cat in the Colosseum. I looked, but they're now all where Caesar was killed. So they're all now in the Forum. So the feral cat colony in Rome lives in the Forum. So if you ever go to Rome, that's worth a trip to the sanctuary there. And they're very kind about letting people come in and take care, pet and take care of the little kitties. So does that help? And the dogs, I need to study more about the dogs, because that's a human health issue. And there are more transmittable diseases through zoonotic transfer with dogs than we want to admit, because we love dogs. And so I've been sick for 3 weeks. I won't tell you why, but it is a zoonotic issue. And it was a dog. It wasn't a cat.
Your students take away from your classes?
We forget most of what we learn, it goes in there and turns into some sort of really good veggie soup. And it's nutritious, but you really can't pick out the parts once you're out of school. But I hope that what I can instill in students is enthusiasm for lifelong learning. And also that, it doesn't have to be sociology, but I hope it is. But that the social sciences are keys for unlocking the social universe. And if you want to know something, there's a good chance somebody's studying it. And so I hope that I give my students, equip them with the knowledge of how to find out what they want to know, that they understand the power of the social sciences and sociology in particular, and that you can learn and love to learn and get so much out of it for your everyday life even. So those would be the 3 takeaways. Oh, and that being wrong is often the most important thing that happens to you in college. The C grade that you got in a course, you will never forget it. You're not going to remember those A grades. At C, you're going to go, why did I get a C? I'm not bad at that. What was wrong? And I will say that, you don't get better at something unless you do trial and error. So those 4 things then, that don't be afraid of being wrong. Take it on board as a lesson.
Multiple nuggets of advice that I think will be great to highlight. I think we're all just kind of processing, because every time you say something, it really does hit a spot in at least one of us. So thank you. We have 1 or 2 more questions, kind of for our closing, but everything has been so informative. I have a list of notes to go through and like follow up and look and research. I've never,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So kind of following, what do you hope students take away? What is the most important lesson that you've learned in your life?
Well, I think this is for it doesn't just have to be first gen or folks from a working class or a working poor background, because it's anybody can have insecurity. But I think that one of the things that I've learned, and I'm really playing on it now, because like when you get my age, you're just like, okay, I'm not wasting any more time being insecure. I want to know, and I'm going to ask. So don't be afraid to ask a question. And yeah, and the other thing, there are stupid questions. You know why? Because we don't always know everything, and that's okay too, because everybody asks them. So I think what I've learned is don't hold back when you want to know something. You just need to ask. Don't be afraid. And I'd say all the years I could have been pursuing something just it took me longer to learn it because I was afraid that I would look stupid. So I would say for anyone, what I've learned is it never killed me. I've never been hurt. I've never, just ask. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Well, then
And that goes for negotiating salary too, by the way.
that's
And I pass on this lesson to all my younger colleagues. And sometimes when I'm negotiating with colleagues to hire them and they come back and go, yeah, I'll take your job. I'm like, no, not so fast. Not so fast, grasshopper. You need to negotiate with me. So give me something to work with here, because you've got to ask. You just have to ask. It can't hurt.
well then throughout your employment journey, what's the one thing that's really stuck with you?
Oh, well, how much like family colleagues can be. If you're in a good place, if you have good, and I'd say if you're not in a place where occasionally you have somebody you're just like, dang, I'd take care of that person. All they have to do is need it, and I'm there. If you're not in that kind of a work situation, get out of the one you're in and get in like that, I'd say. Yeah, because I love people that I love people that I work with. Not everybody loves everybody, that's true, but I love them, and not just like at the abstract level as a human, although I do love them that way too. But I really do. I've committed a lot of my life to my work, and I don't want to be in a work setting where I'm doing so much of my life and not feel like I'm safe and that I can be forgiven and that I'm going to make mistakes and they're going to make mistakes, but we can get together and we can move through it. It's like a family, and maybe it is a family, but you have to be careful with that, because some families are toxic. I'm talking about a good one where you get some support. Not everybody, you say family, some people are like, no. I hear you.
Well, thank you for studying with us today, Carol. We hope that y'all can join us for our next podcast episode, where we'll have another study session where we'll discuss social science in reality.